Mostly I just felt sorry for you.
Guess how the goddess locked in the dog cage escapes, and how she uses the male lead as her tool for pleasure after escaping. The film begins with the male lead, Xiao Bai, who works at a pet shop. His daily job is to feed the pets in the store. With his average looks, his life is monotonous and boring. Although he wants to have a pet of his own, his meager salary forces him to live in a cheap apartment where pets are not allowed. However, everything changed on this day. On his way home by bus, he encountered Holly, the goddess of his school days. Feeling very excited and eager to break his monotonous life, he mustered up the courage to talk to her. But Holly had no recollection of him. After a disjointed conversation, she gave him an awkward yet polite smile and hurried away, leaving him feeling lost as he watched her walk away. Xiao Bai didn't give up. He found more information about Holly through social media, learning that she had just gone through a breakup and was working as a waitress at a restaurant. He then sought advice from his colleague Jack on how to pursue a girl. Jack told him to appear very confident and humorous in front of the girl, acting like a big shot. Xiao Bai took note of this and carefully prepared by gathering information about Holly online. He bought 2 tickets to a concert she had been looking forward to and put on a cheap suit to visit the restaurant where Holly worked, launching his second attempt to win her over. However, Holly showed no interest in him and was even annoyed by his awkward advances, impatiently stating that she already had a boyfriend, which made Xiao Bai feel defeated once again. Despite this, Xiao Bai remained hopeful and began secretly following Holly every day. Holly, who had sensed something was wrong, returned home and complained to her roommate about being harassed by a creep recently. Her roommate comforted her, saying she shouldn't always be so paranoid. Just then, Holly's ex-boyfriend called. She was a bit pleased and answered the call. Her roommate whispered, asking if he was drunk. Holly quietly replied, "A little." Her ex-boyfriend, having keenly heard this, asked, "Who are you talking to? Who are you living with?" Holly, suppressing her excitement, coldly told her ex-boyfriend not to bother her anymore and then hung up. On the other side, the persistent Xiao Bai sent Holly a large bouquet of flowers. However, Holly thought they were from her ex-boyfriend and was very happy. So, that evening, she went to the bar where her ex-boyfriend worked, hinting that she might want to get back together. Xiao Bai, who had followed her, saw her chatting happily with her ex and felt very disappointed. When Holly went outside to smoke, Xiao Bai found her and blocked the door, insisting on talking to her and revealing that he was the one who sent the flowers. Holly was very annoyed by Xiao Bai's persistence and thought he was a creep. She pushed him away and tried to leave, leading to a struggle between them. Holly's ex-boyfriend saw this and immediately stepped in to rescue her, beating Xiao Bai up and throwing him out before leaving with Holly. Despite being beaten and bruised, Xiao Bai noticed that Holly's personal diary had fallen to the ground during the struggle. He quickly picked it up, feeling as if he had found a treasure. Meanwhile, Holly returned home in a panic and told her roommate that she had lost her personal diary, which could lead to big trouble. Xiao Bai, who found Holly's diary, discovered a hidden side of his goddess, and the seed of his twisted obsession began to grow. He found an abandoned storage room in the basement of the pet shop. Then, he bought tools and learned online how to build a sturdy pet cage, which he placed in the abandoned storage room. He also prepared some anesthetics and syringes, adjusting the doses carefully. He started following Holly every day. One dark and windy night, feeling the time was right, he climbed into Holly's house through a window. As Holly finished her bath and was about to sleep, he pinned her down and injected her with anesthetics, kidnapping her. He then put Holly into a box and managed to deceive his colleague Jack without raising suspicion. They successfully transported her to an abandoned storage room in the basement of the pet shop. Strangely, Holly's roommate was completely unaware of what had happened. The scene shifts to Holly waking up in the dark, only to find herself locked in a cage with spiders crawling on her. She immediately screams in terror, calling out for help. However, her cries are drowned out by the barking of the dogs in the kennel above, and no one can hear her. The next day, Xiao Bai brought fast food to see her and thoughtfully prepared a litter box for her. Holly immediately cursed him loudly, calling him a pervert. With his extensive experience in training pets, Xiao Bai coldly said, "So stubborn? Then I'll starve you for 2 days." He then took the food and left. A day passed, and Xiao Bai came to the abandoned underground storage room. Holly was already nearly unconscious from hunger and had no strength left. Xiao Bai gave her some water and brought some food. Holly, having lost all her stubbornness and dignity, grabbed Xiao Bai's pant leg and begged him not to leave. Xiao Bai coldly said, "You need to understand the relationship between us. Now you are my pet, and pets can't grab their owner's pant leg." And then he left. After Xiao Bai left, Holly, now full, sat in the cage hugging her legs and shivering, realizing that she might be trapped in this cage forever. At this moment, her roommate appeared outside the cage. It turned out that this roommate was just a figment of her imagination and didn't actually exist. The imagined roommate said, "You are now at his mercy. If one day he gets tired of you and stops coming, you will starve to death here. So you must do everything to please him and make him happy. Despite understanding that there was no chance of seeing the light of day again, Holly still held onto a shred of defiance. She shouted angrily, "Shut up," and the illusion of her roommate vanished. After a few days, Holly's mindset gradually changed. She ate. One day, while urinating, she noticed a rat climbing onto her foot, and she screamed in terror before crushing the rat into a pulp. That day, Xiaobai came to visit Holly. Holly asked him, "Will you humiliate or kill me?" Xiaobai replied, "No, I want to reform you. I want to save you." Then he took out Holly's personal diary and said, "I used to be an insignificant person in the vast sea of people, while you were the goddess everyone adored. It wasn't until later that I discovered your biggest secret. From that moment, my life had meaning because I was different from others. I knew a side of you that no one else did. In your diary, you wrote that love is just a physiological reaction, but I believe love is a form of sacrifice." Xiaobai discovered the most terrifying secret of the goddess in Holly's personal diary. Every word recorded in it was shocking and chilling. Holly's ex-boyfriend cheated on her with her roommate, leaving her devastated. In a fit of rage, she drove her roommate to confront her ex, but they got into a car accident on the way. Amid the chaos, she took the opportunity to kill her roommate. From that moment on, she became obsessed with the thrill of killing and started murdering people at random. At first, Xiaobai couldn't believe it was true, so he followed her and witnessed her transform into a bloodthirsty killer, brutally murdering innocent passersby under the cover of night. Determined to save her from her madness and prevent more innocent lives from being lost, Xiaobai decided to intervene. He found the storage room and built this cage to tame her like a pet and change her. Knowing that Xiaobai had discovered all her secrets, Holly began to show remorse and pleaded, "I do need saving. Let's start now." Xiaobai looked at Holly in the cage and said seriously, "I will," then turned off the light and left. After Xiaobai left, Holly's roommate's illusion appeared again, praising the performance. Holly, with great interest, said, "I need to make him believe he can save me." It turns out Holly has just started to form her own counterattack plan. She wants Xiaobai to understand who is whose pet. Since that day, Xiaobai noticed that Holly was no longer panicking. She started to chat with him, but only about her feelings when she killed. Holly, with great interest, told Xiaobai not to think he understood her or fall in love with her. Xiaobai then took out her diary, claiming that she was the only one who truly understood Holly. However, Holly began to violently hit the cage and self-harm, warning that Xiaobai would find her dead the next day. As expected, Xiaobai's face showed fear and panic. Holly licked the blood on her face and said that if she died, the police would find Xiaobai, and he would also be doomed. She said their fates were now intertwined, and that she was in control. Frightened, Xiaobai angrily slammed the door and decided to starve her for another 2 days. Let her know who is really in control. 2 days later, Xiaobai came to the abandoned storage room and coldly threw 2 bags of coffee to Holly. While eating an apple, he told her, "This is your food." As he was about to leave, Holly called out to him. Her expression softened, and she said, "I had a dream yesterday. In the dream, it was just the 2 of us. We lived in an underwater house, happy and sweet." These words moved Xiaobai, and he softened, deciding to buy her some food. On the other side, Jack became suspicious of Xiaobai's recent strange behavior. He secretly followed him to an abandoned underground storage room. After Xiaobai left, Jack, hiding in the dark, immediately went in and discovered a beautiful young girl named Holly imprisoned in a cage. Seeing Jack, Holly quickly told him not to call the police, but to find tools to break the chains and free her. Jack clumsily started to examine the lock. Meanwhile, Xiaobai returned after buying food. Discovering the abandoned storage room seemed to have been broken into, he immediately became tense. He picked up a short stick and cautiously walked in. Jack, who was facing away from the door and picking a lock, had no idea that Xiaobai had entered. Holly, however, had already seen him but did not warn Jack. Instead, she showed a subtle smile and suddenly grabbed Jack's hand, saying with a double meaning, "Do you know what true love is? True love is sacrificing everything for the one you love." Jack looked at Holly in confusion, not understanding what she meant. Xiaobai, who grasped the meaning, quietly approached Jack from behind and struck him hard on the back of the head. Jack turned around, and the two started fighting. The small and thin Xiaobai was no match for Jack. At the critical moment of their struggle, Holly, from inside the cage, stretched out her leg and tripped Jack. Jack's bulky body fell heavily, landing right on a blade. Xiaobai stood there, stunned and at a loss, while Holly seriously urged him, "Go, quickly, pick up that brick and finish Jack off." Xiaobai trembled and repeatedly refused, but Holly, with deep emotion, said, "I can't lose you." Realizing her intent, Xiaobai immediately turned around, picked up the stone, and, following her instructions, completely finished off Jack. Staring at the gruesome scene of his colleague, Xiaobai was terrified. Holly, still calm in the cage, instructed him on the next steps to handle the body and destroy the evidence. Following Holly's instructions, he dismembered Jack and fed the pieces to his pet dog, then burned the clothes. Next, he reported to his boss, pretending to have discovered Jack's disappearance. Finally, he threw Jack's teeth into the city sewer. Step by step, as Holly directed, he successfully destroyed the evidence and fell under Holly's control. Now, Holly's task is to completely imprison this man, who is on the verge of collapse, in her mental cage, making him her pet. She told him, who couldn't believe he had killed someone, "Don't deceive yourself. This is the truest part of you. You like me because we are the same kind of person. Accept your true self."
Don't.
Then she gently placed Xiao Bai's hand on her face, rubbing it tenderly and obsessively. She moved his hand downward, seductively saying, "Help me." Xiao Bai immediately pulled his hand back, and Holly's expression instantly turned to disappointment. She said, "I thought you loved me," and then collapsed to the side, ignoring Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai hurriedly left. From that day on, Holly began to ignore him, refusing to speak or eat, and rejecting all communication with him. Xiao Bai started to panic, and his mental state gradually deteriorated, becoming more irritable by the day. One day, Holly finally told him that everything was over. "You can't help me. You put me in a cage. This isn't love, it's possession." Xiao Bai said, "I can't let you go." Holly replied sadly, "I don't want you to let me go. I just want proof that you love me." Xiao Bai immediately asked, "How can I prove it?" Holly told him, "I want one of your fingers to keep me company." Xiao Bai refused repeatedly, horrified, saying, "That's impossible." Holly didn't look at him, tears of sadness falling from her clear eyes. She choked up and said, "I thought you really loved me. I thought there would be someone like me in this world to accompany my go away and never come back." Xiao Bai didn't know what to say or do, so he left the dimly lit abandoned storage room. As soon as he exited the basement, he saw his boss talking to the police. It seemed that Jack's actions had been exposed, and this officer had initially come to investigate him. Xiao Bai then went to the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. He was originally an ordinary, unremarkable person. It was Holly's appearance that gave his life meaning. In a way, Holly saved him, adding a splash of color to his mundane existence. But now, Holly was leaving him, and his life was becoming a mess. After much thought, Xiao Bai returned to the abandoned storage room and asked Holly in the cage, "If I give you my finger, will you believe that I love you?" Holly seriously replied, "Yes." So, Xiao Bai squatted by the cage and cut off one of his fingers. As he watched the blood gush out, his face twisted in pain. Holly's lips curled into a smile. She grabbed the knife he had thrown on the ground and held it to her own neck, fiercely telling Xiao Bai, "Let me out, or I'll kill myself. Now that you've lost a finger, if you don't listen to me, you'll lose me too." Completely under Holly's control, Xiao Bai endured the pain and opened the cage, releasing her. Once out, Holly pinned Xiao Bai against the wall, her eyes full of tenderness, and said, "You saved me, I love you," before deeply kissing him. After a brief moment of sweetness, her eyes turned fierce again. The scene shifts to Holly, who has reconciled with her ex-boyfriend and is living happily together. However, one day she inadvertently discovers her boyfriend being intimate with another girl. Her expression turns cold, but she neither loses her temper nor confronts him. Instead, she goes alone to an abandoned warehouse in the suburbs. Inside the warehouse, there is an iron cage, and inside the cage is a person covered in blood and wounds. Upon hearing Holly's arrival, the person, who has only 3 fingers left, reaches out to her. This person in the cage is Xiao Bai. It turns out that after Holly regained her freedom that day, she locked him in the cage and placed it in the warehouse. Whenever her boyfriend cheats and she feels a surge of violent desire, she comes here to vent on Xiao Bai. Now, Xiao Bai's appearance is ruined, he is blind, and his limbs are mutilated. Like a pet, he affectionately seeks Holly's caress. The film ends. The movie Pet is a classic tale of a psycho versus psycho. The female lead's inability to accept the protagonist is understandable. Sometimes, you just don't like someone, no matter how good they are to you. However, the female lead's inability to let go of her repeatedly unfaithful ex-boyfriend is perplexing. In a relationship, is unconditional tolerance really the best